Disclaimer, this is not meant as any sort of endgame guide, nor anything optimal. This is just meant for people who are starting their primal grind and are trying to use what they have to get a build going to improve as they play. Hello, I'm Wildike, and welcome to a Jolt Ancient Gods build guide. So Ancient Gods build you can find in the build tips here, if you scroll down. And this will show you a more complete version of the build. So these are what you would aim for. One thing I will note is once Egglorg unlocks for you and you can start getting him, he happens to be really good to add to the build. But this would be more of what you're aiming for. This is kind of the bread and butter of the build. When you cast your ult, you get 10 stacks of final damage up. This alone is 40% final damage. Whenever you take health damage, you lose a stack, and it only lasts for 7 seconds. However, what the build does is it lets you stack that up to 99 stacks. And so in order to do that, you run Conjuration passive. You run Hail with Skyfire because of this -5 second cooldown. And then you run 6 pieces of this, which is the Dragon unique set, in order to get the Hail cooldown here. Next up, you have the Temporal Pendant, and this, when you hit an enemy, you lower the cooldown of your ultimate. And then that's kind of the main reason this build works. So, I currently have a lesser version of the build. In order to get the build up and running, I used this, which is just Void Hip. It was basically any primal pants or greaves or armor that I got. I just haven't gotten a primal armor yet. So I got the Hail cooldown, which you need 15% or more on your Umbra. So this was 9.7, and then I got another 0.5% here. And then I had to roll it on this, which was 6.4%, so this was more than I needed. And in order to get this, you can just do reroll. You can click on your piece. So if you insert this in, you can click here and you can see what that slot can have. There is a wiki that has all this information on it for you if you want to find it easier. However, this one is the one we want. This one has Hail cooldown. So I would click that slot and I would reroll until I got the Hail cooldown I needed. And then once you have the Hail cooldown you need on a primal piece, you can come here and you can upgrade it, and it'll randomly upgrade one of these, which is how I got this up higher than the 9.7% here. Alright, so some of the other pieces that happen to go really well with this. Enigmatic Imprint. Whenever you have a shield active, any damage you take that breaks your shield won't damage your health. And this is really good because it can stop you from getting one-shot by a lot of attacks. And this is very needed for a lot of later bosses, and the world boss especially. This here is another really good one. Whenever you use Flash, you get haste. So there's just a couple little Umbra things for you there. For skills, you run Flame Wave with Explosion, and you do that for vulnerable stacks, which you can click on it here. And each stack increases the damage an enemy takes by 1%, so this is another damage multiplier on the enemy. You run Fireball with the Jolt rune, and this is mostly to stun enemies, but it also does decent damage. You run the Flash skill here, and this is mostly just to avoid the enemy. You can run either rune you want. Run Frost Shield with Shattered Ice, and this is just for extra shielding, which makes a lot of sense with the Umbra you run, especially with the Enigmatic piece. Your ultimate, you run Hail with Skyfire, and you run this for its low cooldown with the extra 5 second cooldown here. And this is entirely just to get Ancient God's Call off. If you do not have the Fabled Jolt rune, the build still works, because Jolt attacks very fast. However, you might find that world boss can kill you easily. So you can run Lightning Whip with Numb instead, and you can also run this in some tower floors as well. I do show that version of the build in one of the clips. For sidekicks, there's a lot of options depending on where you're at in the game. If you have unlocked Egglord, he is an excellent primary sidekick to use. You have Holy Cow and Lytharis, who are also really good. Holy Cow increases your haste, and Lytharis increases your crit. If you have spent some money on the game, you can run Lilith instead of Holy Cow, and then you'll run these three. Lytharis is best used if you are not at 100% crit chance. However, if you are at 100% crit chance without Lytharis, then you can swap her out for Holy Cow instead, for a team that looks like this. If you are still fairly early on and haven't gotten to Egglord yet, you can run Thalassar Lilith with Holy Cow or Lytharis. And if you haven't bought Lilith, you can run Thalassar, Lytharis, and Holy Cow. That was quite a bit, but hopefully it wasn't too complicated. This first run is using the Flame Wave Explosion build, and the run is not perfect. I do die partway through, so you can imagine the actual potential the build has. However, I still am able to do almost 1 trillion damage to the world boss, even with under 100 billion power. This second run uses the Numb Lightning Whip version, and as you can see, I do survive longer, so it is a little more consistent there. However, the damage potential is a lot worse, so you will want to keep that in mind. But if you do not have your Jolt Fabled, or you want to use an Ice Flame version of the build, this is a solid choice. Hope this helps people just getting primal. See you next time.